"Mother, why must I marry a human?" The alien princess protested. Princess Lyra floated above the glassy surface of Virelia's central lake, her mind tangled with thoughts she could not untangle. The water below shimmered with the reflected light of the twin suns, painting patterns of gold and violet across her face. She always found comfort here, away from the towering spires of the palace, away from the endless lessons on diplomacy, history, and protocol. But today, even the lake could not calm her. A summons from the High Council had arrived, delivered in crystalline form by an emissary, and its message weighed on her like a stone. The High Council rarely summoned her without reason, and when they did, it was always important. Lyra could hear her mother's voice echoing in her mind, calm yet unyielding. Queen Seraphine, the ruler of Virelia, had always been a figure of perfect poise and authority. To challenge her was unheard of among the council or the people, yet Lyra felt an unfamiliar rebellion stirring inside her. As she descended to the palace, the air shimmered with energy. The Virelian world was a marvel of intelligence and order. Towers spiraled into the sky like crystalline trees, their surfaces catching light in a dazzling array of colors. Floating gardens drifted between the spires, and tiny drones humbly tended to the plants, shaping them with precision. Every movement of every Virelian was purposeful, efficient, and precise. Lyra, despite being their princess, had always felt a restlessness in this perfection. Inside the council hall, the air was cool and fragrant with synthetic flowers. The High Council waited in solemn formation, each member a master of their field. Scholars, strategists, scientists, and diplomats all observed her with a careful stillness. At the center stood Queen Seraphine, her crystalline crown catching the sunlight in a spectrum of colors. Lyra could see the faintest hint of worry in her mother's eyes, and it made her heart tighten. "Princess Lyra," the queen began, her voice calm but firm, "the council has deliberated for many cycles. The time has come to fulfill a responsibility that has been long ordained. You are to enter into a union with a human from Earth, Captain Adrian Kane." How could anyone suggest that she, Princess of Virelia, should marry one of them? "Mother, why must I marry a human?" she finally whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. "They are different. They are chaotic, impulsive, and fragile. Our world, our people cannot rely on them." "Lyra, this is not about weakness or fragility. It is about the strengths humans possess that we do not. Creativity under pressure, adaptability, courage when faced with overwhelming odds. For centuries, Virelia has depended on precision, logic, and planning. But the universe does not always bend to our calculations. Sometimes, it is the unpredictable that saves the day. How can I accept a life with someone whose ways are so alien to me? Your union with Adrian Kane is not merely a marriage. It is a bond that will secure the safety and future of our people, and perhaps it will teach us lessons we cannot learn alone. From a species that wages endless wars over trivial matters, that destroys their own world, that fights among themselves for power and greed. Do you understand the gravity of your duty?" "Very well," she said finally, her voice low yet firm. I will meet him, but do not expect compliance, mother. I will not pretend to feel what I do not." Lyra studied the records of humans, observing their history, their conflicts, their achievements. She learned of their explorations, their inventions, and their triumphs over unimaginable odds. Still, she found it difficult to see them as equals, much less a potential partner. Finally, the day came. A shimmering portal opened in the palace courtyard, revealing Captain Adrian Kane stepping into Virelia. He was tall, with a commanding presence, but his eyes held curiosity rather than arrogance. His uniform, though simple, radiated authority and practicality. He looked out of place among the crystalline beauty of the palace, yet there was a quiet confidence in his stance that made Lyra pause. She observed him silently, noting the way he moved, how his gaze took in every detail. He approached her with a steady step, and for the first time, Lyra felt a flicker of something she could not name: intrigue. "Princess Lyra," he said, his voice firm but respectful, "it is an honor to meet you. You are far from home. I trust your journey was uneventful." They acted on instinct as well as intellect, blending the two in ways her people seldom did. Over the following days, Lyra accompanied Adrian on tour of the city, showing him the floating gardens, the crystalline spires, and the vast libraries where knowledge of the universe was stored. Adrian asked questions, many of them naive in Lyra's eyes, yet his curiosity was genuine, unshakable, and fearless. One afternoon, as they walked along the edge of the central lake, a sudden tremor shook the platform beneath them. Energy pulses rippled across the water, threatening to destabilize the walkway. Lyra froze, but Adrian acted immediately. He grabbed her hand, pulling her to safety and anchoring both of them with precise movements he had learned in his training. For a moment, Lyra was speechless. The human's unpredictability had just saved her life. She looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time wondered if perhaps there was something remarkable about these beings. "Are you always this reckless?" she asked, a hint of disbelief in her voice. Adrian chuckled softly. "Sometimes, princess, but recklessness has a method if you know what to do in the moment." Perhaps humans were not as fragile as she had believed. That evening, as the twin suns set and the sky turned a deep violet, Lyra stood alone on the palace balcony, watching the stars emerge. She thought of the human who had entered her life so unexpectedly. She did not feel love, not yet, but she felt curiosity and, more dangerously, respect. Queen Seraphine appeared beside her, silent at first, letting her daughter reflect. "What do you think of him?" she asked gently. Lyra sighed, turning to her mother. I do not know. He is unlike anyone I have ever met. He is human. But their resilience, their courage, their spirit, they are qualities we can learn from if we allow ourselves to see them. This is why you must approach him not as a duty, but as an opportunity to understand, to grow, and perhaps to protect our people in ways Violins alone cannot. Humans were chaotic, unpredictable, and emotional, and perhaps, she realized with a mixture of fear and anticipation, exactly what Virelia needed. For the first time, she felt the stirrings of a possibility that had never existed in her orderly life. That in understanding this human, she might find not only an ally but a partner capable of facing the universe's challenges with her together. And so, the first chapter of an unexpected bond began, one that would test the limits of courage, challenge the boundaries of culture, and reveal the extraordinary potential of a species that Violins had long underestimated. Lyra did not know it yet, but the human before her, Captain Adrian Kane, would change the course of her life, and perhaps the fate of her entire world, forever. The following days on Virelia were unlike anything Princess Lyra had experienced. Captain Adrian Kane moved through the crystalline city with a mixture of awe and determination, absorbing everything with sharp eyes and quick questions. He marveled at the floating gardens, the glowing spires, and the library halls that stretched endlessly, containing knowledge accumulated over thousands of cycles. Lyra had expected humans to be careless, clumsy, or easily overwhelmed, but Adrian proved to be alert, adaptive, and remarkably capable at every turn. Yet, Lyra's pride and skepticism refused to fade completely. She observed him carefully, noticing that his methods were often unorthodox. While Violins relied on precise calculations and established procedures, Adrian trusted his intuition, often acting before fully analyzing a situation. At first, she dismissed it as recklessness, but slowly she realized that his instincts were not random. They were guided by experience, observation, and a fearless confidence she could not ignore. Their first joint exercise, organized by the High Council, took place in the simulation hall, a vast chamber where holographic projections could recreate any environment, any disaster, any threat imaginable. Lyra had prepared meticulously, expecting to lead the exercise and teach Adrian how to navigate Virelia's protocols. But the first scenario, an unstable energy bridge suspended over a simulated canyon, tested them both. Lyra calculated the exact timing and movement needed to cross safely. Adrian, however, suggested a slightly different approach, one that ignored several calculated precautions. "Trust me," he said simply, a confident glint in his eyes. Lyra hesitated. She wanted to argue, to point out the dangers, but a sudden shift in the simulation made her decision urgent. With no time to recalculate, she followed him. To her surprise, Adrian's approach worked perfectly, stabilizing the bridge and guiding them across in half the expected time. Afterward, Lyra struggled with a mix of frustration and admiration. She had been trained to trust logic above all else, yet here was a human, seemingly reckless, who had achieved the impossible through intuition. "You rely too much on instinct," she said quietly, brushing a strand of her silvery hair from her face. "And yet, somehow, you succeed. We humans make mistakes, but we learn from them fast, and sometimes that's faster than endless calculations." Adrian's courage and adaptability challenged her assumptions, making her wonder if there was more to humanity than she had allowed herself to see. Over the next cycle, their training intensified. The Council devised simulations of increasingly dangerous scenarios: asteroid storms threatening a mining colony, malfunctioning defense drones in orbit, and hostile alien creatures in a remote jungle. Each time, Lyra noticed the same pattern. Adrian relied on quick thinking, improvisation, and fearless action. He made mistakes, of course, but he corrected them almost instinctively, learning and adapting at speeds that no Virelian protocol could match. One evening, after a grueling exercise, Lyra found herself walking beside him along the terraces of the palace. The sky was painted with the pale light of Virelia's twin moons, casting shimmering reflections on the crystal towers. She felt unusually quiet, her mind heavy with thoughts she could not yet articulate. "Princess," Adrian asked gently, breaking the silence, "do you ever wonder why humans survive where others fail? I have studied your species extensively. It seems illogical. We Virelians plan for every possibility. Humans act without certainty and yet endure. In Virelian culture, outcomes and calculations were sacred. Emotions were secondary, often set aside to maintain order and efficiency. Yet here was a human, arguing that the unpredictable and emotional aspects of life were strengths, not weaknesses. It unsettled her, but there was something compelling in his conviction, something she could not dismiss. As the days passed, Lyra began to notice subtler qualities in Adrian. He treated every person he met with respect, asking questions and listening earnestly, never dismissing anyone's opinions. He laughed openly, celebrated small victories, and admitted mistakes without hesitation. These were traits she had admired in theory but rarely witnessed in practice. He was not perfect, but his imperfections were part of what made him capable, adaptive, and human. Then came the test she had dreaded most, a mission beyond the city, to the floating outposts in Virelia's upper atmosphere. A sudden storm had disrupted communications, threatening the delicate energy grids that powered the gardens and the spires. Lyra and Adrian were sent together to assess the damage and stabilize the systems. The storm was worse than predicted. Turbulent winds tore at the platforms, and unstable energy surges crackled in the air. Lyra moved with precision, guided by calculations and careful measurements. Adrian moved differently. He leaped, adjusted, improvised. At first she found his methods reckless, endangering them both. But then, as she observed, she realized that he could see patterns she could not, small cues, subtle shifts, and unexpected contingencies. When a portion of the platform threatened to collapse beneath them, Lyra froze, calculating the safest route. Adrian, without hesitation, anchored them both and manually redirected the energy flow, stabilizing the structure with a combination of intuition and quick adjustments. Lyra watched, amazed. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but in ways that complemented Virelian precision. Together, they achieved what neither could have accomplished alone. After the storm subsided, they returned to the palace, soaked and exhausted. Lyra's chest heaved, and for the first time she felt a profound sense of respect for the human beside her. You are not what I expected," she admitted quietly. Adrian smiled, his eyes reflecting the twin moons. "And neither are you. I've always thought of Virelians as distant, perfect, and unyielding. But your determination, your intellect, your courage, you're remarkable." Humans were different, unpredictable, emotional, yet they had a strength she could not ignore. That night, Lyra could not sleep. She wandered to the balcony, staring at the twin moons as they rose high above the crystalline city. Her mind replayed the day's events. Adrian had saved her, guided her, and proven that humans were capable in ways Virelians could not always measure. She realized that her prejudices, formed from distant observation and cultural bias, had blinded her to a truth she could no longer deny. Humans had a spark, a resilience, a courage that could not be calculated, predicted, or controlled. Queen Seraphine appeared quietly beside her, a gentle presence that Lyra had learned to respect deeply. "He is unlike anyone you have met," the queen said softly. "And that is precisely why he will challenge you, teach you, and perhaps become indispensable to your world." Now she began to see him as something more, an equal, a partner, someone whose strengths complemented her own in ways she could never have anticipated. The days that followed were filled with exercises, simulations, and shared discoveries. Lyra and Adrian learned to anticipate each other's movements, to combine precision with intuition, to blend Virelian logic with human creativity. Their initial tension softened into mutual respect, and then into a tentative camaraderie that neither fully understood. One afternoon, as they practiced in the simulation hall, Lyra paused, observing Adrian solve a particularly complex scenario. He moved with confidence, adjusting to unforeseen variables, improvising when needed, and never faltering. She realized then that this human, so different, so unpredictable, was teaching her something fundamental, that survival, success, and greatness were not measured by perfection alone, but by adaptability, courage, and the willingness to face the unknown. Lyra smiled faintly to herself. Humans were not fragile as she had believed. They were extraordinary in ways her people rarely experienced. And perhaps, she thought, they were not meant to replace Virelians, but to challenge them, to complement them, and to remind them of the potential that came from imperfection, risk, and spirit. As night fell over Virelia, the twin moons casting their glow across the crystalline spires, Lyra felt a new sense of purpose. She did not yet know if she could love this human, but she could respect him, learn from him, and perhaps even trust him. And that, she realized, was the first step toward a bond that might change not only her life, but the future of her entire world. For the first time, Lyra allowed herself to hope that this union, forced by duty and circumstance, might become something greater, something unexpected, resilient, and uniquely human. And so, the princess began to see a path forward, not just as a leader of her people, but as someone who could learn from the courage, ingenuity, and spirit of a human beside her. Captain Adrian Kane was no longer just a visitor from Earth. He was a teacher, a partner, and perhaps, in time, something even more. The days on Virelia grew busier, and the challenges facing Princess Lyra and Captain Adrian Kane increased in intensity. The High Council, impressed with Adrian's performance during the simulations and field exercises, decided to escalate the trials. Lyra found herself facing situations that tested not only her skills but her patience, adaptability, and ability to trust a human. Every challenge was designed to push her beyond what she had considered possible, to see if she could work alongside someone so different from her, and whether the alliance with Earth could truly benefit their world. Their next assignment took them to the outskirts of Virelia, where the atmosphere thinned and gravity fluctuated unpredictably. A network of research outposts relied on precise energy grids that were unstable due to recent cosmic storms. The task was to stabilize the grids and ensure that vital data and life support systems were fully functional. Lyra had led missions before, but never with a human at her side. She approached the task with calculated precision, charting every step with meticulous care. Adrian, as always, took a different approach. He examined the situation quickly, scanning the systems and the surrounding terrain. Where Lyra calculated safe paths and carefully timed movements, Adrian improvised solutions on the fly, leaping across unstable platforms, adjusting energy nodes, and rerouting power lines with swift, confident motions. Lyra watched in disbelief, her heart racing with fear and admiration. When a section of the platform began to crumble beneath them, Lyra froze, calculating the trajectory and the safest route to stabilize it. Adrian reacted instantly, anchoring himself in Lyra with energy restraints and manually redirecting the power flow. Sparks flew, the platform shuddered, and for a moment it seemed they might both fall. Then, with a final adjustment, the system stabilized and the outpost's lights returned to steady brilliance. Lyra exhaled slowly, her chest pounding. You act without fear," she said quietly, shaking her head. "How can you do that?" Humans survive because we learn to act even when the odds are against us. Over the following weeks, their assignments grew more complex. They faced malfunctioning drones in deep atmospheric corridors, collapsing energy conduits, and unstable terrain that tested every ounce of their skill. Each time, Lyra noticed the same pattern. Her Virelian training emphasized precision, control, and adherence to protocol, while Adrian relied on intuition, rapid problem-solving, and a willingness to accept calculated risks. And each time, his methods succeeded where hers alone might have failed. One particularly challenging mission involved a damaged transport corridor suspended over a canyon of plasma energy. The simulation of the storm that had struck the area was intense, with shifting energy fields that threatened to collapse the entire corridor. Lyra meticulously calculated each step, timing her movements to avoid the surges. Adrian, observing her calculations, shook his head. "Follow me," he said simply, his voice calm but confident. "We'll take a faster route." They reached safety moments before the corridor collapsed entirely. Breathless and shaken, Lyra looked at him, realizing that humans' unpredictability was not chaos, it was adaptability. Adrian's mind could process risks, opportunities, and solutions simultaneously in ways that defied Virelian logic. His methods were messy, yes, but effective. And in that effectiveness, she began to see the unique brilliance of humanity. That evening, they sat together under the light of Virelia's twin moons, overlooking the shimmering spires of the city. The trials had brought them closer, not emotionally, perhaps, but intellectually and strategically. Lyra found herself discussing ideas with Adrian in ways she had never done with her own people. She asked questions, debated solutions, and even considered approaches she had once deemed illogical. Adrian listened, offered his perspective, and encouraged her to experiment, to test, to adapt. "You're learning to trust instinct," he said, smiling. "It's not about abandoning logic. It's about adding another layer to it. Humans rely on experience and intuition because they know it can complement calculations, not replace them." Humans had mastered these qualities, and in working alongside Adrian, she was learning to do the same. Their growing bond was not without tension. Lyra's pride often clashed with Adrian's confidence. There were moments of disagreement, heated discussions over strategy, and times when Lyra questioned whether humans could truly be trusted in critical situations. But each disagreement ended with insight, with a deeper understanding of each other's strengths and limitations. One day, a sudden alert brought them to the edge of the city. A rogue asteroid, dislodged by cosmic turbulence, threatened to collide with Virelia's main energy hub. The council had calculated its trajectory and concluded that the only chance of survival was to intercept it with precision drones. Lyra's plan was flawless on paper. She had mapped every angle, every adjustment. But the situation was evolving faster than calculations could keep up. Adrian acted instinctively. He coordinated the drones in real time, improvising adjustments to their paths, predicting shifts in the asteroid's rotation, and making quick decisions that no pre-calculation could account for. Lyra watched, initially frustrated that he ignored her careful plan, but as the asteroid passed safely, narrowly avoiding the city, she felt awe and respect. "You saved the hub," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Your instincts, they work." She had underestimated humanity, dismissing their unpredictability as weakness. Now she saw it for what it truly was, a different kind of strength, one that complemented her people's precision. And in that moment she realized that her view of Adrian had shifted. She respected him, not just as a capable ally, but as a being whose courage and intelligence were extraordinary. The following days continued to challenge them. Each exercise, each mission, forced Lyra to reconsider her assumptions. She learned to act with intuition, to trust in Adrian's judgment, and to blend her calculations with his adaptability. Slowly, the princess who had once protested the idea of marrying a human began to see the value of their bond. One night, after a long mission in the floating gardens, Lyra and Adrian sat together in quiet reflection. The twin moons cast shimmering light across the crystalline city, and for the first time, Lyra allowed herself to feel more than admiration. She did not yet know if love was possible, but she felt a growing connection, a sense of partnership that transcended culture, species, and expectation. "Do you ever wonder," Lyra asked quietly, "why humans endure so much? Your species fights, suffers, and survives in ways we Virelians cannot imagine. Because we care, because we want to protect those we love, because we believe in possibilities that might seem impossible. Humans survive not because we are perfect, but because we refuse to give up." It was not something that could be taught through calculation or protocol. It had to be experienced, felt, and embraced. And she was beginning to embrace it, in herself and in the human beside her. By the end of the cycle, Lyra had changed in ways she could not have predicted. She approached Adrian not as a duty, not as a political necessity, but as a partner. They shared ideas, strategies, and perspectives in ways that built trust, understanding, and mutual respect. Her initial resistance had softened into curiosity, her skepticism into admiration. Humans were not weak, chaotic, or fragile. They were remarkable in ways Virelians had long ignored. And for the first time, Lyra allowed herself to wonder if this human, Captain Adrian Kane, might become more than a necessity. Perhaps, in time, he could become a true companion, someone who would challenge her, teach her, and face the universe's dangers alongside her. The trials had revealed the strengths of humanity, and Lyra had begun to recognize the potential within herself to grow, adapt, and see beyond the rigid structures of her culture. In the partnership between Virelian precision and human ingenuity, a new kind of strength was emerging, one that could shape the future of both their worlds. As she watched the twin moons rise higher in the sky, Lyra felt a sense of anticipation and hope. The challenges ahead would be greater, the dangers more severe, but she no longer faced them alone. She had learned the first lesson of humanity, that courage, adaptability, and determination were forces as powerful as logic and precision. And she knew, deep in her heart, that the journey with Adrian had only just begun, a journey that would test them both, reveal hidden strengths, and perhaps, in time, forge a bond that would change the fate of Virelia forever. The skies above Virelia darkened with an unnatural shadow. Sensors on the crystalline towers detected massive energy signatures approaching from beyond the atmosphere. The High Council convened immediately, and Lyra and Adrian were summoned to the command chamber. The urgency in the air was unmistakable. A fleet of marauder ships, unlike anything Violia had faced before, was heading toward the planet. The ships were massive, sleek, and heavily armed, their energy weapons pulsing with dangerous precision. The Council quickly calculated that the invaders intended to seize the planet's technology, particularly the advanced energy cores that powered the floating gardens and the crystalline towers. The threat was immense, and the Violians' standard defense protocols would not be sufficient to counter such a cunning and unpredictable enemy. Lyra's heart raced as she listened to the projections. She felt the weight of her responsibility pressing down on her chest. This was no simulation. This was real. And for the first time, she realized that her understanding of humans could make a difference not only for her own survival, but for the survival of her entire world. Adrian stepped forward, his calm confidence a stark contrast to the tension in the room. "We can't rely solely on standard defenses," he said. "These attackers will adapt quickly. We need unpredictability, improvisation, and fast decision-making. We need to act in ways they don't expect." A rigid response could lead to disaster. Perhaps this human's perspective, so unconventional yet insightful, was exactly what they needed. The first wave of attacks came swiftly. Marauder ships descended through the atmosphere, their weapons cutting through the clouds and striking at Violia's energy nodes. Automated defense drones fired back, their lasers precise and efficient, yet the invaders adapted with astonishing speed. Lyra realized that pure precision alone would not suffice. Adrian coordinated with the Violian pilots, giving rapid instructions that combined his intuition with Lyra's calculations. "Shift the drone's formation to mimic a retreat," he instructed. "They'll think we're vulnerable, then redirect the energy nodes to create a trap." As the battle continued, Lyra noticed a subtle change within herself. Where she had once relied solely on logic and calculation, she now trusted instinct, improvisation, and the counsel of a human beside her. Adrian's unpredictable, courageous actions complemented her own methodical strategies, creating a synergy neither could achieve alone. The second wave of attacks was more dangerous. The Marauder ships split into multiple formations, testing different parts of the planet simultaneously. Lyra and Adrian were forced to divide their attention, moving between command consoles, guiding drone squadrons, and stabilizing energy cores that threatened to overload. Sparks flew across the control panels, and the crystalline floors trembled beneath their feet. "Lyra, redirect the northern shield grid to intersect with the southern drones," Adrian shouted over the alarms. "It'll force their fleet into a choke point near the canyon of plasma energy." The plan worked, and the Marauder ships were funneled into a concentrated zone, where they were vulnerable to concentrated fire. Lyra's heart pounded, but she felt a rush of exhilaration. For the first time, she truly understood the power of combining Violian precision with human adaptability. In the midst of the chaos, a larger threat emerged. A massive Marauder battleship broke through the outer defenses, its energy weapons targeting the heart of the city. Lyra's calculations showed that a direct confrontation would be suicidal. She turned to Adrian, hoping for a solution beyond standard protocol. Adrian's eyes gleamed with determination. "We'll need to lure it into the canyon and use the plasma currents against it. Timing is critical. Follow my lead." With a final surge of energy, the battleship was destroyed in a spectacular display of light and power. Lyra exhaled deeply, her body trembling from the adrenaline and the intensity of the battle. She looked at Adrian, realizing that humans were not just capable, they were extraordinary. They adapted, they improvised, they faced danger head-on, and they inspired others to do the same. Humanity's unpredictability, once seen as a flaw, had become Violia's greatest asset. After the immediate threat was neutralized, Lyra and Adrian moved through the city to assess damage. The Marauder fleet had left destruction in its wake, but the people of Violia were resilient. Automated repair drones were already restoring energy lines, while engineers worked tirelessly to stabilize the remaining systems. Lyra observed them quietly, a sense of pride swelling within her. She realized that courage and adaptability were not limited to humans. They were qualities that could inspire her own people when combined with her leadership. In the quiet moments that followed, Lyra and Adrian stood together on a balcony overlooking the city. The twin moons reflected off the crystalline towers, painting the scene in silver and violet. For the first time, Lyra felt a deep sense of connection, not just with Adrian but with the potential of collaboration between their worlds. "You were amazing," she said softly. I don't think I could have done this without you." She had once seen humans as fragile, unpredictable, and unworthy of trust. Now she understood that their differences were strengths, and that together they could face any threat. The victory over the Marauder fleet also changed the perception of the High Council. Advisors and leaders who had doubted the value of the alliance now saw firsthand the power of combining Virelian precision with human ingenuity. Lyra's initial protestations faded into memory, replaced by a recognition of the extraordinary potential of collaboration between species. In the following days, Lyra and Adrian worked side by side, implementing improvements to the city's defenses, training pilots, and mentoring engineers. Each project reinforced the lessons they had learned. Adaptability, courage, and teamwork were as critical as calculation and precision. Lyra found herself growing in ways she had never anticipated. She learned to trust instinct, to embrace unpredictability, and to value the perspectives of others, even when they defied her understanding. The bond between Lyra and Adrian deepened as well. They faced danger together, made split-second decisions, and relied on one another for guidance and support. Trust, respect, and admiration grew naturally, forming a foundation that neither protocol nor duty could create. Lyra realized that the human before her was more than an ally. He was a partner in every sense, someone who could challenge her, teach her, and stand with her in the face of unimaginable threats. One evening, after a long day of repairs and training, Lyra and Adrian sat quietly in the palace gardens. The air was filled with the hum of energy drones and the faint scent of blooming crystalline flowers. The twin moons cast their light over the gardens, creating a sense of peace after the chaos of battle. "You've changed my perspective," Lyra admitted softly. "I used to see humans as fragile and unreliable. Now I see strength, courage, and ingenuity in ways I could never have imagined. And it's why we work well together, you and I, Virelia and Earth." It was an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to form a bond that could shape the future of her world. The days that followed were filled with rebuilding and preparation. The Marauder threat had been neutralized, but the lessons of the battle lingered. Lyra knew that danger could return at any time, and that survival would depend on courage, adaptability, and the ability to trust one another. Adrian had proven that humans possessed these qualities in abundance, and Lyra was beginning to see the extraordinary potential of their partnership. As the twin moons rose over the city, Lyra felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was no longer just a princess bound by duty. She was a leader, a strategist, and a partner in a union that had already proven its worth. Humans were extraordinary, not in spite of their differences, but because of them. And together, she and Adrian could face the universe's challenges with courage, intelligence, and resilience. For the first time, Lyra allowed herself to hope, not only for the survival of Virelia, but for the future of the bond she shared with the human who had entered her life so unexpectedly. The trials had tested them, the battles had proven their strength, and the partnership between Virelian precision and human ingenuity had emerged stronger than either could have imagined. And as she watched the city glow beneath the twin moons, Lyra knew that the journey with Adrian was far from over. Greater challenges awaited, but she no longer faced them alone. Together, they would confront whatever threats the universe might send, relying on their combined strengths, their trust, and the extraordinary courage of humanity. The princess who had once protested, who had questioned the wisdom of marrying a human, now saw the truth clearly. Humans were not just capable, they were exceptional. And in the union of their strengths, Virlia had found hope, resilience, and a future bright with possibility. The city of Virlia was alive with a sense of renewal. The scars left by the Marauder attack were fading, replaced by shimmering energy fields, repaired towers, and flourishing gardens. Yet the princess knew that peace was fragile. The universe beyond their skies was vast, full of dangers that no one could fully predict. What mattered now was the strength they had forged together, Virelian precision and human adaptability, and the bond that had grown between her and Captain Adrian Kane. Lyra moved through the palace halls with a new sense of purpose. Her duties were no longer burdensome. They were opportunities to apply what she had learned, to guide her people through uncertainty, and to embrace the strength she had discovered in herself and in humanity. The High Council had taken notice. Where once there had been skepticism about the alliance, there was now admiration, even awe, at what a human and a Virelian princess could accomplish together. Adrian accompanied her as always. The human had grown accustomed to Virelia's customs, its crystalline architecture, and the strange rhythms of life on the planet. Yet he remained himself, curious, courageous, and unafraid to challenge assumptions. Together, they moved through the council chambers, discussing strategies, improvements to the city's defenses, and plans for future exploration beyond their skies. The final challenge, however, was not in the council chambers or on simulations. It came in the form of an unexpected signal, a distress beacon from a remote sector of Virelia's outer atmosphere. Reports indicated that a rogue faction of marauders, smaller but no less dangerous, had returned, targeting isolated research outposts. Lyra felt a familiar tension in her chest. This was no test, this was real. "We'll face them together," she said quietly, turning to Adrian. "As partners, as equals." They worked seamlessly, their coordination now honed by weeks of shared trials and battles. When they arrived, the outposts were under siege. Energy shields flickered, alarms blared, and automated defenses had been overwhelmed. Marauder drones patrolled the skies aggressively, and smaller fighter crafts darted in unpredictable patterns. Lyra assessed the situation, mapping precise strategies to counter the attackers. Adrian, observing her calculations, suggested adjustments based on intuition and rapid predictions of enemy behavior. Together, they coordinated the defense. The first engagement was intense. Drones clashed in the sky, lasers cutting through the dark atmosphere. Lyra's precise commands controlled the flow of energy shields, protecting vulnerable points in the outposts. Adrian led counterattacks, improvising new strategies when the enemy changed formation unexpectedly. Their combined efforts created a rhythm, a synergy neither could achieve alone. During a particularly tense moment, a Marauder ship broke through the defenses and aimed directly at one of the research labs. Lyra's calculations predicted it would strike within moments. Adrian acted instinctively, redirecting drone fire while simultaneously altering the trajectory of the energy shields. Sparks flew, and the air trembled with the force of the attack. The ship exploded just above the lab, leaving it unharmed. Lyra's chest heaved. "You saved it," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of relief and awe. Adrian shook his head, smiling faintly. "We saved it, together." Their unpredictability, courage, and ingenuity complemented the Virelian strengths of precision, intelligence, and planning. Where her people had once relied solely on calculation, she now saw that collaboration with humans opened new possibilities. By the time the Marauder faction was fully neutralized, Lyra and Adrian were exhausted but triumphant. The outposts were safe, the attackers defeated, and the lessons of the battle had strengthened both of them. The people of Virelia looked on with admiration, witnessing firsthand the power of unity between two very different species. In the quiet that followed, Lyra stood on the balcony of the command center, overlooking the restored city. The twin moons cast their silvery light across the towers and gardens, creating a scene of serene beauty. She felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for Adrian, but for the opportunity to learn, to grow, and to embrace the strengths of another species. Adrian joined her, standing silently beside her. The city stretched below them, resilient, vibrant, and alive. "You've changed my world," Lyra said softly. "I used to think humans were fragile, unpredictable, and dangerous. Now I see strength, courage, and brilliance where I once saw only flaws. You taught me to see the value of structure and calculation, and I hope I've shown you the power of instinct and adaptability." They were equals in every sense, bound by respect, courage, and a shared vision for the future. The High Council convened again, this time to recognize the extraordinary achievement of the princess and the human captain. Lyra spoke before the council, her voice steady and confident. "We have faced threats that tested not only our skills but our understanding of each other. Humans possess strengths that Virelians rarely appreciate: courage, creativity, and the ability to act under uncertainty. By working together, we have saved Virelia and strengthened our bonds. This partnership is not merely a union of necessity, it is a union of mutual respect and shared purpose." Adrian stood beside her, a quiet presence that spoke volumes about the trust they had built. The approval of the council marked not only a political victory, but a personal one, validating the lessons they had learned together. In the weeks that followed, preparations for the official union between Lyra and Adrian continued. The city celebrated not only the survival of Virelia, but also the unprecedented collaboration between Virelia and Earth. Citizens watched with curiosity, admiration, and hope, seeing in this partnership the potential for a future where two worlds could thrive together. Lyra approached her mother, Queen Seraphine, seeking counsel as she had done countless times before. "Mother," she said softly, "I understand now why you wished for this union. Humans are not weak, they are extraordinary. And in facing these trials, I have learned more about courage, resilience, and leadership than I could have imagined. It was about understanding, growth, and the survival of our people. You have proven yourself capable of embracing the unexpected, and in doing so, you have honored not only Virelia but humanity as well." Citizens gathered, their faces filled with awe and celebration. Lyra walked through the halls with calm determination, her heart steady yet full of anticipation. Adrian followed, his presence a reassuring force at her side. The ceremony itself was simple yet profound. Lyra and Adrian stood together before the council and the people, exchanging vows that spoke not only of union but of respect, trust, and shared responsibility. They were no longer a princess and a human bound by duty. They were partners, equals, and protectors of a world that had witnessed their courage and ingenuity. As they completed the ceremony, the citizens of Virelia erupted in applause. The union symbolized more than marriage. It symbolized the power of collaboration, the potential of combining strengths, and the triumph of courage, adaptability, and understanding. Humanity had proven itself not just worthy of respect, but capable of inspiring greatness. After the celebrations, Lyra and Adrian stood on the highest balcony of the palace, overlooking their city. The twin moons shone brightly, casting silver light over towers, gardens, and the people who had survived unimaginable threats. Lyra turned to Adrian, feeling a profound sense of gratitude and admiration. "Captain Kane," she said softly, "you have changed my life, my perspective, and the future of my world. I do not know what lies ahead, but I know we will face it together. Together, we are stronger than any threat, wiser than any calculation, and capable of achieving more than either of us could alone." She saw courage, ingenuity, and spirit, the qualities that had saved her world and earned her trust, admiration, and a bond that went beyond duty. As the twin moons reflected off the crystalline spires, Lyra and Adrian stood together, looking out over Virelia. Their partnership was no longer just a political necessity. It was a testament to the extraordinary potential of collaboration between two very different species. The princess who had once protested now embraced the union fully, seeing not only the strength of the human beside her, but the new possibilities their combined strengths could bring. And in that moment, Lyra understood the true meaning of the lessons she had learned. Courage, adaptability, and trust could surpass even the most rigid of calculations, and the bond forged in trial could shape the future of worlds. Humanity had proven itself extraordinary, and together, Lyra and Adrian would guide Violia into a new era of hope, unity, and limitless potential.